Super excited to get into this conversation as we talk about World Cup 2.0. Steph, I'm going to start with you. Lenovo was recently named the official technology partner, a top-tier category in any year, let alone in the era of World Cup 2.0. With 48 teams, 104 matches across 3 countries, and fans who don't just want to buy product, they want to participate, they want to have a voice. For World Cup 2.0, how is Lenovo using AI tools and immersive technology to move fans past being passive and being active participants in the tournament story?
Thank you for the question. I love that question. And I could talk about it all day, so I'll save some of my remarks for you guys. But it's a pleasure to be here and representing Lenovo. We are thrilled to be the official FIFA Technology Partner, and it's such an exciting moment when you think about what's happening from a technology standpoint and all of the innovation that is happening through AI that allows us that kind of opportunity to engage with fans and engage in the events surrounding World Cup in a really meaningful and a very differentiated way than we have in the past. As we think about it, it's probably good to start with our mission at Lenovo, and it's really about smarter AI technology for all. And so when we think about that mission and we think about the relationship to FIFA, there's such a powerful connection when it comes to the World Cup. We're about to experience a moment where the world is going to come together. I think I read a stat, it's like 6 billion people will tune in. I think that's like 75% of the population of the world. And so this moment to really leverage technology to engage fans in an experience and to extend the game beyond the field is really exciting for us. So we have some tricks up our sleeve. We're thinking about how do we take that fan experience to the next level and really make it even more experiential than in years past by leveraging that technology. So it's AI technology, it's a full stack, and it's taking that fan experience and really elevating it to the next level. So super excited.
I mean, it deepens fandom, right, which is what all of our goals are. Alexi, you played in 1994, the last time the United States hosted. That doesn't mean you're old. That's just, you're a legend, of course that. Back then, technology was a giant scoreboard and a nifty fax machine. Today, we have semi-automated offside technology, multiple sensors in the ball. How does that level of precision change the game for the better for the players?
Well, first things first, obviously I did not get the memo that this was at a pool. The beach part of it probably should have tipped me off had I read it. But, I might be a little overdressed for the occasion. But I think what it does is dramatically illustrate how important a year it is for us and how important a moment it is, as you were saying, what is happening this summer with the World Cup. I am sitting on this stage in this suit with you beautiful people, in front of all you beautiful people because of the 1994 World Cup. Changed my life forever. I lived the power of what it can do to an individual, but I also saw how it can change a culture and how it can leave a legacy. And it should be said, not just the 1994 World Cup, but also the 1999 Women's World Cup. They are still flagpole moments that we think of. But yes, it was a long time ago, back in the 1900s, back in the previous century, and things were very different both on and off the field. I think when you look at technology and the implementation of technology in all sports, not just in soccer, it probably mirrors a lot of the things that you are talking about here in that, are you making it easier? Okay, but are you making it better? And I'm sure many of us could get up here and grumpy old man or woman the thing and say, oh, back in the day. But the reality is that there is a whole generation that not only accepts but expects the type of technology that we are seeing. And so when it comes to soccer, for example, VAR, which now is multiple years down the road, and when it was implemented, it was amazing to see the reaction. But the reality is, again, there's a whole generation that is just part of the way that they watch sports. Again, this summer, there will be new innovations, whether it's the way that they are looking at offside, whether it's the way that they are looking at corner kicks, whether it's the way that they're using AI. I don't know if you saw a couple months ago, a coach for a professional women's team mentioned that she had used AI to come up with her starting 11, and the gasps but were audible all across the country. How dare she? Well, she's using a tool that is now available to do these different things. And so whether it's a coach, whether it's a player, whether it's a fan, whether it's an organization, obviously implementing as many different technologies that are going to, yes, make it easier, but in doing so, hopefully make it better. I think that's the trick and the magic spot that we all have to get into. And I think players will adapt. There's no way I could play this game the same way that I played back in the 1900s nowadays. But I like to think that I'm smart enough, even though I'm wearing a suited up pool, to be able to adapt in the moment.
I mean, you talk about fashion precision, a full suit at the beach. It doesn't get any more precise than that.
I think that the kids are going to see this, and this is going to be the new norm going forward.
Game
This is
changer.
what we call innovation, Alexi. John, Nielsen data shows that U.S. interest in soccer is expected to grow 62% thanks to 2026. However, fans are more fragmented. 72% are using social media to watch highlights rather than just linear television. For brands and sponsors, how do you quantify loyalty in a world where the fan experience is happening on a second screen as much as it is the first?
Yeah, great question, Andrew. Thank you. And hi, everyone. Great to be here today. Just want to underscore, like Alexi's point, this is going to be a huge moment for US soccer with the World Cup coming here. When we think about fandom, I do want to highlight and underscore that, live viewership, 90 minutes on the glass is still really important. Okay, and it's really important for marquee events like the World Cup, like the Olympics, like the Super Bowl. And it's a reason why Fox and Telemundo, buy the rights for these events, and it's a reason why major brands around the world invest in these rights. So, that is going to be really important. I'm excited about Nielsen's measurement here in the US of the World Cup. It's going to be our most comprehensive coverage with expanded out of home, big data coming from 75 million devices around the US as well. But I want to recognize also that fandom is multimodal and it's multi-touch point, right? It is watching the live game. It is going to the game live with friends and family. It is about going to watch parties and social gatherings, and it's also about following it via social media and creator-led content as well. So, that then becomes the conundrum around how do you define loyalty? And again, I think this is where kind of Nielsen comes into its fore. We think about fandom as being cross-platform, and we use detection to understand not just where the consumption's happening, but where the content is going across multiple platforms, assessing the sponsorship content around that, and then thinking about the outcome around that for consumers. And so that's what I'm really excited about around the World Cup is actually this content proliferation across multiple platforms and channels, being able to capture that and being able to articulate what that means to brand partners like Lenovo from a business impact perspective.
I love that. I think it just builds even more loyalty because you're spending more time with the sport in different avenues and different platforms, but you're watching on television,
Yep.
You're watching the highlights, you're talking about it on social, you're sharing, which again, ultimately deepens the connectivity between the fan and the sport. Steph, Lenovo's partnership includes both men's and the Women's World Cup in 2027. From an e-commerce and global brand perspective, how does a tech giant like Lenovo use World Cup data to personalize the consumer experience? And are we moving to a future where the World Cup is a 24/7 shopping and engagement platform rather than just a tournament?
I'll take the last part of that question, and I would say emphatically yes. It is 24/7, and I would liken that to if you think about fandom, and we've been talking about it in different veins. Fandom is a 24/7 proposition, and so I think to meet the consumer where they are, or the fan where they are, it requires that level of surround sound for the user. And so the way we're thinking about it is first and foremost, to your point about data, there is so much rich data that we have the good fortune of being able to benefit from as a partner. And so now it's then taking that data and being able to think about how we harvest that data and those insights to give the personalized experience you're talking about. We were talking backstage about being fans. And each one of us has a different experience of what fandom really is. And so when you think about the power of that data and the ability to take that data and create customized and curated experiences, it's really powerful, and it creates a really powerful connection with that consumer, both for FIFA, but also for, of course, the Lenovo brand. And so we're spending a lot of time thinking about how we bring that to life through engagement, yes, on the glass, on .com, not the glass you're referring to, we often refer to it as well as the glass, but on the .com glass, but we're also thinking about it in relation to community, both on platform and off platform. We're thinking about that personalization through a content lens and how we make that experience personalized in a way that meets that fan where they are and consume the kind of content that they want to consume. And then the third area as we think about it is, yes, it's commerce. And you know, when I think about the principles of marketing, yes, a lot's changing with technology. You talked about it would change the game in soccer, it changes the game for marketers. But I think what's fascinating about this moment is, you know, affinity marketing is still alive and well. And I think that's the opportunity that we as marketers have in front of us this summer, is thinking about the relationship to that fan and that shared affinity that we have for the game, and then the ability to be able to deliver what that fan is looking for from a technology standpoint.
I love that, meeting the fan where they are, and it's a perfect lead-in to my question for you, Alexi. You've touched every part of the game. You're a broadcaster with Fox, and you're literally the bridge between the data and the fan. When you have access to real-time win probabilities or player fatigue sensors in the booth, how do you tell that story without drowning the fan in numbers and data?
Yeah, so in a normal World Cup year in the past, I would have started this month, 6 months before, looking through players and teams and getting as much information as possible. And the reality is that nowadays what required 6 months with a push of a button can be there. However, am I actually digesting it in the way that I would normally by actually having to go out there and do the work and get the players' names? And the quick answer is no. I'm still using it in order to get prepared for when we go on air. When we do go on air, yes, we will have all the bells and whistles and all the technology and all the numbers, and that's important. And as we said earlier, that's what a generation now expects, and there will be things that you see happen that you can't believe your eyes are happening in and around the coverage, whether it's me or anybody else out there. But that's all there ultimately to make the experience as valuable to the people that are watching as possible. But there is also the human element that regardless of the direction that we are going in, and maybe even so, if the pendulum starts to swing the other way, I don't know how many of you have young kids, but I've already seen some of them actually gravitate to a more human type of relationship and a more human type of interaction. And so I think there can be a balance, and hopefully, and I know this it can be self-serving, hopefully humans are still involved going forward, and we still need those humans like myself and others talking about the game, but it will be with all those bells and whistles. And to the point, and I think it's not only soccer, but in particular soccer, and in particular a World Cup, where the world is watching. You have all of these different nations. You know, I can't tell you the amount of people still that will come up to me and say, the way I think about my sport and the way I think about my country relative to the sport changed in the summer of 1994. And so people will get an exposure to the game in a way that they haven't in the past. Real quick story, I've told it 100 times, but I think it bears repeating. 2 weeks before the World Cup in 1994, I got on a plane. I sat down in a middle seat, sat down next to an older woman from the South. We struck up a conversation. She said, "What do you do?" I said, "I play soccer." She said, "What's your job?" I said, "I play soccer." She said, "What do you do for money?" I said, "Ma'am, I play soccer." 2 weeks later, I'm in front of 1 billion people. But the reality is that this woman and others will come into that tent. And it's up to us in this short little window to convert as many of them as possible. And how we do that when it comes to Fox is obviously up to us. And I think it's going to be the proper balance of the innovation, the technology that we have, the progressive type of way that we are putting not just soccer, but sports on the air, combined with that human element that I think attracts people to the game, and in particular to the game of soccer, where there is that passion and that music and that romance and that dancing and the culture and the global part of the game that I just think is so unique to the game.
You're such an expert because, again, you've touched it all, and obviously being on the pitch. How do you give context to a fan about those numbers, about that data, and what it means when you're talking about experiencing it as a player?
So first off, don't let anybody tell you that the United States is not a soccer playing country or that the United States does not have a soccer culture. In the past, we used to explain what a throw-in was. We don't do that anymore. It's a beautiful game. It's also a very simple game, which is why it is beautiful. People will catch up, and more importantly, when they watch you, your credibility is at stake, and they will know if you are talking down to them. When I watch football, I don't know a tremendous amount about American football, but when I watch it, I can tell when I'm being talked down to, and that's the last thing in the world that we want. We'll slow it down a little bit, okay, because we want as many people into the tent as possible, but the reality is that there is an incredible soccer community and culture that exists out there, completely changed from the summer of 1994. I think that's going to be on display too this summer when people return to our shores for this World Cup and they see how far we have come since 1994 and 1999. And it all comes back to not just from a television perspective, but I think from a cultural perspective and a country perspective, it's opportunity and responsibility. Opportunity to bring people into the tent and to celebrate not just the game, but not for nothing, what I think is the greatest country in the world on the 250th birthday of the greatest country in the world, all right? And to celebrate that, and then the responsibility of making sure that if they're coming from the outside or if they're coming from the inside, that they have a kick-ass experience. And that's what we think about day after day. And I put my player cap on at times. Obviously, I put my TV cap on all times, and I tried to meld them two together and to say, what would I want if I was sitting on that couch, or if I was sitting on that bar stool, if I was sitting at a nice pool like this in a suit, watching television and watching the World Cup? What would I want to see up there on the screen?
I love that. John, Nielsen has noted that Gen Z and millennials make up 76% of the U.S. soccer fan base. If 2026 is the entry point for this massive cohort, what does the modern fan look like in the year 2030? Will we still be watching 90-minute matches, or are we moving toward a more gamified version of the sport?
Okay, that's a deep question, Andrew. A really deep question. Hey, look, we'll change the fan behavior in 2027 with the Women's World Cup and Netflix being the official broadcaster in North America. But look, like Steph touched on a lot of these points around personalization, around meeting the fan, where they're congregating. The 90-minute game is still going to be important for the purist. It is 100% going to be important. People are going to watch World Cup games for 90 minutes. What I think about is more of a deepening and enrichment of the game, not a shortening of the format. And by that, I mean it's a more active experience that fans have. So what could that look like in 2030? Like, it's greater personalization. It's AR overlays on data. It's specific fan cameras allowing you to choose which players you're actually looking at. It's the ability for audio to be able to listen to your favorite content creator and their commentary and punditry on the game. It's all of those areas of personalization that I think are going to come into fore. But that's all going to come down to, what are the rights that someone like, FIFA and someone like, the official broadcast partners are going to allow for people to have out there. So I'm really excited about the opportunity of the personalization of content, but I don't see us going to a gamification shortening of the content. I see a much more active participation in the content, and that could be micro betting, micro predictions. Where is Pulisic going to knock his next ball? That's the lean-in experience that I think we're going to be getting to. I think we're there now. It's more about what are the rights going to be in the future?
You raised such a great point, even about the rights and what's going to be allowed, because it's such a thin line between a rights conversation and the responsibility to continue to grow the game for a new generation and a young demographic that does want more access because it's what they're used to, or they want to control their viewing experience better. So for you guys, have you seen any opportunities when you talk about that younger demographic from a technology standpoint, that you see the game drilling further into because it's such an opportunity to grow the sport and make sure that the connective tissue is deepened with that young fan?
I think the players are so important here. Like, you know, the younger consumer, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha consumer, right? They're more athlete and player first than maybe they are team first. And so being able to see these athletes demonstrate their mastery, right, on the field, show off their skills and things, that's so important. That's inspirational for younger consumers. And you know, being able to disseminate that across multiple platforms through different content, more digestible content as well, that's very engaging. That is a lean-in moment for younger kids to inspire them to go and play the game, go and practice it, try it with your kids, go up to the field with your friends and do it. Like, I think the players are really important.
Well, I would just say in terms of monetizing something like the World Cup or the games in general, nobody wants to kill the golden goose, right? But sometimes people have different ideas of what actually can kill that golden goose. You know, for example, there was a lot of brouhaha about hydration breaks that are going to happen now in the World Cup. And is this good for the game? You were mentioning earlier how segmenting the game or doing something that's not necessarily traditional. And this is, while hydration breaks have happened at times in the past, this is for everybody. And for people who don't know, this next summer there will be moments where in the middle of each half there will be a mandatory hydration break. It doesn't matter whether you're playing in the stifling heat down in Miami or if you're playing in the nice indoor confines of Atlanta. You will still have a hydration break, which conveniently doubles as an opportunity to advertise. All right, so are you hurting the game? Are you potentially killing the goose with that? And I think, again, it's going to have to be a continual conversation, and what we as one generation might think is really detrimental, another generation might just say, hey, this is part of the show, and you're a bunch of old people. And guess what? Those young people will eventually be old people and grumpy old man and woman too at a certain age. Just kind of, 'twas ever thus.
I think for me as a marketer, I often think your North Star, you can never go wrong if it's fan back. And so just like you'll say in marketing, it's customer back, everything is customer back. And so when you think about the fan is changing and how do you move with the fan and what their expectations are. And if I had to latch onto one word, I would say it's about access, and I think you said it, Andrew. And this generation has come to expect access to creators and accessibility that I think does transcend sport. And while it may be different than the crotchety old men or women, I don't know who you think's the angry old man or woman on this stage. I'm getting nervous.
Not us.
But we're not.
Evolved,
we're very contemporary. Yeah. But I think it's following the kids and following the fan and giving them the access. And that is such a beautiful thing when you think about a love of a sport and the ability to surround that. And you also touched on it, Alexi, when you said this is such a fascinating sport from the standpoint of culture and all the dimensions of culture that transcend this sport. So I just think there's just tremendous opportunity as opposed to it being rate limiting for the sport.
I love that. Last question, lightning round. We'll go down the line. We'll start with you, Steph. In one sentence, what is the most CES moment, the most high-tech, the most futuristic thing we will see during the 2026 World Cup?
All right, well, let me do a little bit of a spoiler alert and a shameless plug. I can't tell you because we're going to be announcing all of this at Tech World tonight, Lenovo's event at the Sphere. But what I can do is give you a little peek under the tent, which is, there are two things I think about. If I can have two in my lightning round?
You get two.
Okay, my two are, we're going to see the use of technology by humanity at an unprecedented scale. So again, if I go back to the stat I saw the other day, 6 billion people are going to be tuning in. We're going to see that 75% of the population is going to be engaging with technology and new technologies like AI at such a scale that we haven't seen. So I think that is dramatic, and that'll be the first thing. And then the second thing is, I think just when you think about the power of AI, and we've talked about it in the context of being a sportscaster, we've talked about it in the context of how you improve enriching data, the ability to take take and create an immersive experience. Lenovo is the official tech partner for the Sphere. So if any of you have had the opportunity to visit the Sphere, you know how immersive that is. So my peek under the tent is imagine that what we're unveiling is as immersive, if not more, to the football experience that we have known in the past, if you just think of the Sphere as that icon for immersiveness.
What a teaser. I love it.
Wow, that's the way you tease. Boy, we'll go to commercial. You got to come back now. That's amazing. So real quick, I'm more on the field type of stuff. If VAR is used for corner kicks, which is what it's going to be this World Cup. I'm a big set piece guy. Set pieces are really, really important in the sport. At one point, if it gets overruled, the call gets overruled, and then that team scores on that corner, technology will have been used to fundamentally change a moment in that game and maybe even change history going forward. And then we saw this past summer at the FIFA Club World Cup, referees with cameras that give you just a very, very different look, literally a look at what is going on the field. And if those are implemented next summer, which we think they are going to be, that'll be just a different look technology-wise.
Love the POV cameras that the refs have been using.
Other than England crashing the internet, all social media platforms when they lift the trophy in the MetLife Stadium in July, I think I would say it's going to be the Creator World Cup. And so I'm really excited actually to see that, like the battle of the creators, the intersection between lifestyle, culture, and sport, and being able to actually measure that and identify the outcomes around that and what decisions will be made around the creator economy for future big sporting events. I think the World Cup is going to be a really great test bed for that. So that's exciting for me.
One thing that we cannot have happening is England coming over and winning a World Cup for the first time since the 60s on our soil on our 250th birthday. All right?
Have it. All right.
Anything can happen in the World Cup, but that cannot happen.
I completely agree. Sorry, John. Many thanks to our esteemed panelists who are literally changing the game and ushering in the future of the beautiful game. Give them a hand, everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.